Afternoon. Am I coming through clearly?
Yes, we hear.
Okay. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. I appreciate it greatly. Um, my talk this afternoon has a title that is slightly revised after the one I submitted some months ago. The title I'll be working with today is After Justice in the Progressive Post-Truth World. After Justice in the Progressive Post-Truth World. This paper is based mainly on my recent book, as was mentioned, entitled appropriately After Justice. And the theme of the essays collected in that book mesh finely with the theme of this conference, because in a sense, what we are indeed is talking about the transformation from rule of law to lawlessness, because in this progressive post-truth world, justice becomes jeopardized. So let me begin, please. With a philosophical prescience, Dietrich von Hildebrand once cautioned, one of the most ominous features of the present epoch is undoubtedly the dethronement of truth. From his times in the 1940s through subsequent decades, he perceived that certain social, political, and cultural forces are fomenting the denial of objective truth. Hildebrand was principally concerned with Nazism, socialism, and communism, but his warnings certainly applied to movements which arose after his death in 1977, such as postmodernism, political correctness, cancel culture, and the woke. In fact, because of the extent to which these more current movements share epistemological subjectivism, moral relativism, and the enthronement of ideology over philosophy and science, these movements can be included together as derivative versions or forms of an overarching progressivism. It is such progressivism which is transforming what we have known and valued traditionally as truth and morality into the constructs of a post-truth world. But what is the origin of progressivism? To answer this question in broad strokes, it began as a philosophy in the 18th and 19th centuries with such philosophers and works as Marquis de Condorcet's Outlines of an Historical View of the Progress of the Human Mind, 1795, Auguste Comte's Course on Positive Philosophy, 6 volumes, 1830 through 1842, and Comte's friend, John Stuart Mill, in the later editions of his Principles of Political Economy and some of the applications of social philosophy. The original edition was in 1840. The chapters on socialism were added in 1874. Despite certain differences, all of these works have in common the view that their versions of progressive principles can engineer a much better, perhaps even a utopian society in which economic socialism and social justice prevail. In the early 20th century, progressivism abandoned all pretense of being a philosophy and became a thoroughgoing ideology. It was even a short-lived official political party for a time called the American Progressive Party. In fact, the Progressive Congressional Caucus still exists today in the U.S. Congress with over 100 members, mostly in the House of Representatives. As the ideology it has become, progressivism is a leftist populism that seeks social justice above all else. Each of the various more current versions or derivative forms of progressivism that were mentioned above has its own set of ideas and specific agenda. But for all of them, the social justice goal is paramount. These forms are also becoming more and more authoritarian and extreme. Postmodernism, which is not as vital today as it was in previous decades, established its legacy as a complete epistemological subjectivism. It bequeathed to civilization the post-truth world. The politically correct and cancel culture forms have become dictatorial with the advance of their unassailable, absolute social justice standards of moral righteousness. The woke mentality especially manipulates the power of the incessant echo chamber of social media. For example, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, etc., and mainstream media, TV and radio stations to transform the people into a conformist, hive-minded ruling mob that recognizes and imposes only its brand of social justice. It has reached a point that what we commonly and historically believed about justice is being fundamentally transformed into something entirely different. It is not a matter of the traditional virtue of justice as fairness. We are confronting what is after justice. After whatever fairness standard suits the progressive ideological social agenda to fundamentally transform civilization. Fairness is merely a stratagem for executing the progressive revolution. It's truly fortunate, however, that the rich, spiritually grounded Catholic Christian tradition of faith and reason offers us a most solid foundation for challenging the post-truth contemporary progressivism. That foundation is realism in three essential facets. Number one, metaphysical realism, which maintains there is an objective design to the entirety of God's creation. The natural universe is governed, ordered by laws and principles. The universe is not chaotic, not anarchic, nor is it the mere mental projection or construct of what humans believe or want it to be. Man is not the measure of all things. The measures of what lay before us, and we can discover and not simply invent the measured design of what is. Two, epistemological realism. It is possible to know the truths of objective reality. All knowledge is not merely one's subjective perspective. With our cognitive abilities and reasoning, we can discover and affirm truths about ourselves as human beings, about our society, and about the natural world in which we exist. This is the true meaning of the slogan, "Science is real," which is so popular in the woke set. The real science progressives advance is politicized. They claim it is real because it serves their revolutionary purposes, such as with climate science, gender science, embryological science, and epidemiological science. When alternative science is advanced, especially in these areas, it's canceled, snuffed out, and those who advance an alternative are derided, abused, and sometimes even arrested. Three, last facet of realism, moral realism. We can know the difference between right and wrong. Moral relativism, however, skeptically questions who's to say what's really right or wrong. Isn't it all just relative to your opinion? Such relativism is presently used as progressive rhetorical device to trick us into accepting their so-called tolerant views on morality. The tactic is that after we are befuddled by the constant skepticism, we are rendered vulnerable to accepting the progressives' relativism as the truth because with it, at least we have something to believe in. But with moral realism, we know that rational inquiry can enable us to discover, again, not invent, what is virtuous as opposed to what is vicious. Realism gives us hope. It is the hope that the truth can be learned. Hope edifies us to affirm that the truth makes sense within the order of God's creation. And though with our limited human abilities, we might not be able to discover the whole truth all of the time, we persevere and take joy in what truth we have grasped. Only realism can engender and support such hope and joy and challenge the post-truth world. That challenge should best begin with understanding the progressives' revolutionary agenda in order to identify the contours of its ideology. As a starting point, it is important to contrast progressive ideology with the traditional view of the crucial influence of religion and morality on culture. Andrew Breitbart, a 20th century philosopher, believed that politics is downstream from culture, and culture is downstream from religion. To expand on this traditional view, culture, especially morality, flows from religion, and politics and economics flow from culture. Breitbart's traditional view is simply expressing what numerous others, including the founders of the USA, asserted. George Washington, our first U.S. president, in his farewell address, stated that, and I'll read this slowly because the syntax is, of course, 18th century, a little difficult to understand. Of all the dispositions which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. These are the great pillars of human happiness. Where is the security for prosperity, for reputation, for life, if the sense of religious obligation deserts us? Let us with caution indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion. Whatever may be conceded to the influence of refined education on minds of a particular structure, reason, and experience, both forbid us to expect that national morality can prevail in exclusion of religious principle. It is substantially true that virtue or morality is a necessary spring of popular government. The rule indeed extends with more or less force to every species of free government. For Washington, morality rooted in religion is a necessary condition for maintaining within culture a national morality which is held firmly by the nation's people. This is the only type of culture which can sustain a free government. John Adams, the second U.S. president, stated, "It is religion and morality alone which can establish the principles upon which freedom can securely stand." As with Washington, Adams emphasizes the vital importance religion and morality have on securing freedom and maintaining a democratic republic. Richard John Neuhaus, a 21st century culture commentator, observed that politics is chiefly a function of culture. At the heart of culture is morality, and at the heart of morality is religion. Neuhaus is unambiguous in his explanation of the way religion is the soil for the healthy growth of morality, culture, and politics. The traditional view then can be capsulized as religion spawns morality, which influences culture, which in turn shapes politics and economics. So, to capsulize a kind of hierarchy, religion, morality, culture, politics, and economics. Religion, through its morality, is the principal driver of a nation's politics and economics. This, however, is turned upside down by the progressives' aims to command and control culture through their politics and economics. The late U.S. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan analyzed the difference between traditionalism, often called conservatism, and progressivism, liberalism, as such. Here's what Moynihan had to say. The central conservative truth is that it is culture, not politics, that determines the success of a society. The central liberal truth is that politics can change a culture and save it from itself. Moynihan recognized that in the traditional view, culture is the driver of social success. He also recognized that for liberals, politics rule, so that a culture that is not driven by their progressive politics is damned, and it must be reformed to save it from its own backwardness. His insight illumines a basic conviction of progressive revolutionary strategy that politics and economics can change culture and make it conform to the ideological ideas for an enlightened, woke society. The full progressive agenda can be expressed in this way. Politics, through social justice morality, spawns economics. Together, they spawn culture, which in turn influences education, the justice system, and the media. Politics, through social justice morality, spawns economics. Together, they spawn culture, which influences education, the justice system, and media. The progressives' ideological social justice morality is the basis of their politics, which informs their economic socialism and ultimately defines their woke culture through dominating such areas as the education system, the justice system, and the media. These areas transmit, spread, and systematically develop the woke post-truth revolutionary agenda. This progressive agenda is devoid of religion. In the name of their supreme value of social justice, religion must be excluded. No influential moral force greater than their ideology can be admitted. They believe that the unenlightened morality of traditional religions must be deconstructed and substituted with their politically constructed woke morality. A social justice morality that, for instance, 1, redefines vices as virtues, as with sexual morality and abortion. 2, eliminates the merit of individual accomplishment to ensure that only marginalized groups receive the benefits they have been not denied in the past. And 3, transforms personal civil rights into group entitlements, which society and the government must fulfill. I underscore that, must fulfill. Entitlement is what equity, a progressive's buzzword, equity, the watchword of social justice. The entitled believe that they do not merely deserve an equal opportunity to achieve an outcome, but society and government owe them the outcome. Such guaranteed outcomes can include receiving a no-cost or very low-cost college education, a decent paying job, complete coverage for health care, available transportation, housing, special treatment by the criminal justice system, and financial reparations for past injustices perpetrated against their group. This is what they're entitled to, the ideology maintains. And entitlement means guaranteed fulfillment for the sake of true social justice. Progressive politics wages its revolution with the weapon of economics. Through socialist economic policies, they create antagonisms between classes, races, ethnicities, and genders. Progressives' favored groups are those who are oppressed victims by past inequalities and inequities. They are given or promised privileged status through various government policies and programs. These groups' allegiance to the progressive agenda is fortified by such privileges. Progressive social economics secures their politics and engenders the changes in culture they seek. They contend that without the social justice morality they promise, the nation will be overwhelmed by the many types of crises it faces. Only their political economic ideology will ensure true justice. For example, Janet Yellen, the president of Biden's President Biden's cabinet secretary for the Department of Treasury, has bluntly stated this alarming warning. Quoting Yellen, "The country is also facing a climate crisis, a crisis of systemic racism, and an economic crisis that has been building for 50 years. I believe economic policy can be a potent tool to improve society. We can and should use it to address inequality, racism, and climate change." Economics by the progressives being used under the guise of social justice to transform society into the socialist utopia they imagine. The progressive revolution against traditional society is a war to dethrone truth and implant a post-truth world. It is presently mainly a Cold War, but a war nonetheless. Effective resistance begins with understanding and appreciating what the realism of the Catholic Christian faith tradition offers, comprehending the revolution's anatomy, and finally, recognizing and rejecting progressive woke political strategies and leaders as abetted by educational institutions, the justice system, and the media. Progressivism will not abandon their agenda, though knowledgeable resistance founded on a recovery of realism and traditional morality-based religion and culture could have salutary effects in staving off the revolution. Most of all, for Catholic Christians, we must open our souls so that our hope is in God and acknowledge that God cannot fail. To quote scripture, and we know that in all things God works for those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. Christian faith teaches us that we should not solely base our hope for justice or happiness on any politician or politic. As Curtis Hancock, a 21st century philosopher, reminds us, Christianity is about transforming the heart and soul of an individual into a new person in Christ. In essence, Christianity is not a political project. It does not promise an earthly utopia by conquering all injustices. But through God's grace, our faith and hope may nonetheless improve to some extent our profane world. Thank you for listening.